What were we talking about? The video from yesterday?
Yeah, about parents.
About like it's interesting to me when people they're in a relationship with their significant other and they feel like what's happening is just happening. Like the problems that you're having, you just happen to have those problems. You just happen to have a problem with anger, or you just happen to have a problem with seeing your spouse in a particular way, treating your partner in a particular way. You just like you don't know how you got to this point in your relationship with your kids. That's just kind of how it turned out. Well, I made some mistakes. I always did the best I could. Well, there's that. You know what I'm talking about? There's that kind of like random. Well, if things had gone differently, but for me, it's like it's so obvious. The stuff is pre-patterned and predetermined. Is this so clear? Like this shit ain't just happening. Like they're like, and it feels like that because a lot of the pattern level stuff, a lot of the source code that determines how I interact with you in moments that are really relevant, like the make or break relationship defining situations that occur once in a relationship or at intervals in a relationship, once in a day, first thing in the morning when the coffee's being made, and I come up and act a certain way towards you, or you act a certain way towards me, and it sets the tone for the whole day. Most of the time, that stuff's not just happening, especially if it happens over and over and over again. And it's and you can point to things that are like, you know, proximal causes. Well, I was tired. Well, I was stressed. Well, then those things probably were patterned and programmed and pre-planned and set into motion a long time ago. Like I create my environment, and then my environment sort of creates me or influences me. But the thing is, though, I set my environment up in a particular way. I set my environment up in a way that sets me up in a way to do things usually that I saw being done when I was growing up. You know what I'm talking about? And it's just really interesting to watch how this stuff plays out. And one of the things for me is to become very suspicious of not just the behavior of other people and what they're up to, very suspicious of my own misgivings about other people. How do I feel about my friends? What am I inclined to conclude about my friends? How do I feel about my partner? What am I inclined to conclude about my partner? How do I feel about my children? How do I feel about our relationship? How do I feel about the fact that the relationship is the way that it is? Because I hear a lot of parents who don't have good relationships with their children, and they at one level, at the explicit level, they are all apologetic and they're all open-hearted and they're all, I don't know, I recognize I made some mistakes, but I was doing the best that I could. They're saying all the right things, but if you pay attention closely to what they're talking about beneath it, what the implication, the implicit, which is always more powerful and more relevant, is I made some mistakes, but I did the best that I could, and all I've ever done is love my children, and my children just won't see that now. And my children just don't see that now. So really, I have problems, but those problems are basically okay, and those problems are just kind of part of being a human being. But my child has a problem, which is that they can't see the fact that that's true. And that's pretty obviously bullshit, right? But that's the kind of thing that a person will believe that will allow them to kind of perpetuate a relationship dynamic with someone else, child, spouse, parent, whoever, that isn't necessarily serving them and that they don't necessarily want. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, well, do I know what you mean? Of course I know what you mean. That you just described so perfectly the rationalization process I go through after you kind of call me out on some sketchy communication. And then I'm always trying to say, oh yeah, but really I'm pretty much, I didn't do anything wrong, or like it's 99% me, 1% you
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think what happens a lot of the times with that is that when there's that trying to preserve the pattern, is that when you make a concession, when one makes a concession, when one makes an admission, the admission is true and irrelevant. Or when one's defending oneself. This is a very common thing. True and irrelevant comments, sure sign that a person is in a program that they're trying to defend themselves, right? They're trying, that essentially almost is like the program has control over them, and what they're attempting to do is adhere to the rules of exchange going on. They are trying to take into account the information that they know that you have that seems to implicate them in some kind of shady business between the two of you, and then they're trying to take all those things and then turn it into a story that doesn't require them to become aware of or to acknowledge to you the really fundamental dysfunctions in the exchange, which point to the really fundamental dysfunctions that exist in the relationship. I will concede to you things that are non-essential to my bullshit programs for making sure that our relationship isn't as good as it could be, right? But I will fight you tooth and nail when it comes to acknowledging anything that's going to really fundamentally require kind of a radical transformation in the manner in which you and I interact. I will resist that, even if a fundamental radical change in the manner in which you and I interact would be in both of our best interests, if it would make us more happy and fun and fulfilling. And so that's one of those things too, is that if you've ever been kind of in conversation with someone and you can use an immaterial concession to the other person. You can use the fact that they don't accept that as the olive branch. You can use that as a weapon against them. So, for example, you point out that I'm systematically, say, uncharitably misinterpreting things that you're saying, right? And I've done it 5 times in our conversation. And you're cognizant of the fact, you're saying, gosh, this is interesting. I don't think this is happening by accident. I don't think he's stupid. I don't think he's consciously malicious. I think that he's in some kind of pattern. He's in some kind of state of consciousness that's causing him to just, his automatic reaction to the things that I'm saying are to make opportunistically uncharitable misinterpretations of it, right? That's an empirically verifiable kind of phenomenological reality. I am witnessing this thing happening 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I know this is happening. I'm seeing it, and I've seen it before, right? So you point that out to me, because what you want me to do is not apologize for each instance of it in sequence. You want me to see the pattern, because it's not you don't want me to apologize for the fact that I set a pair of your underpants on fire. You want me to recognize that this habit that I have of burning up your panties is probably a fucking problem. You know what I'm saying? That I need to help. You know what I mean? Not something I actually do, by the way. Just kind of a funny
bizarre example.
But you'll remember it.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? But see, the thing is, that's a really funny example. But that's exactly the shit that people do. Mm-hmm. I have fundamental patterns for interacting with you that are unresourceful. We get into a fight as a result of that, or perhaps the patterns get activated because we're in a fight, right? And then you point those things out to me because you're astute enough, you're aware enough to see what's happening. You say, you seem like you're doing this, and you did this before, and then actually when I pointed it out to you, when I pointed that pattern out to you, your reaction to my pointing it out to you was another iteration, an instance of that pattern. Do you see that? Is that interesting to you? What's going on? I'm trying to understand that. Is that consistent with your experience now that I'm saying that to you? Is that something that seems true to you? Does that seem not true to you? Does it seem off the wall? Does it seem probably true, but not something you want to acknowledge? What's the deal? What's going on there? There's something happening here, and I don't think it's you as a real person, but it's being channeled through you. Do you know what I'm saying? And then what do I do in a situation like that? Very often, I will apologize for one content-based iteration of that pattern. I'll say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. You're right. I shouldn't have said what I said there. And then you'll say to me, okay, I appreciate that, but do you see that you were doing it over and over and over again? And I'll go, what? Look, I apologize. Can't we just move on? Can't we just move on, right? Because the thing is, for you, you don't
This literally happened this morning, if anyone's wondering.
you don't want to pound the flesh for me in the form of an apology for a single thing. But see, that's that economy of negative stroke giving, though, which says, listen, I'm going to punch you, and you're going to punch me here and there. I'm going to sucker punch you once in a while. You'll sucker punch me once in a while. If you catch me doing it, or if I can't give you a good reason for why I did it, then I have to say, sorry, I sucker punched you. But at no point are we allowed to sit down as two human beings, two adult people, and say, God, it seems like we kind of sucker punch each other at reliable intervals. Why do you think that keeps happening? We can't have a real discussion about the fact that this is some shit that we do with some regularity. That's not allowed. We can apologize for individual instances of it, but we can't talk about the fact that this seems to be an overarching, recurring theme. Like a soap opera. It's the same fucking shit over and over and over again. Harvey's in the hospital, but Wendy's out cheating on Dave, and Dave doesn't know about Wendy's secret plot to take the heritage or the inheritance away from Bill, And like every season, it's the same kind of stuff, but the names are different, the cast changes and turns over, so-and-so's cheating on such and such instead of, this person cheating on them. But it's the same basic patterns. But the content changes, and so some people are able to stay entertained by it. Same thing with this life stuff. You know what I mean? And so I'll apologize for an individual instance of it, but I get very hostile, I get very defensive. I try first to placate, there's a chipmunk. I try first to placate you by apologizing once. But if you can really tell if a person's apology was pure poison on the basis of how they respond when you acknowledge and accept that apology, but feel as though there's still something else worth talking about. Because if I offer you an apology and I'm really sorry, and you say, okay, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that, and thanks for, can I also just mention one thing about this? You know what I'm saying? And there's a very specific, I want you to see a specific thing. There's something else. There's something that I think that perhaps we're not fully getting totally, or that we're not on the same page about. And even, it's not even I know you're doing something and I know you don't know it. That's not it. It's I perceive you as doing something that I don't perceive you as perceiving yourself as doing. Now, one of two things is true. I'm off base, in which case I need information from you to help me clarify, or I'm on base, right? And you need information from me, right? So that you can then check it against your own experience and have an awareness about whether or not that's actually happening. And if it is happening, how do you make sense of it? And how on earth did you manage to do it without knowing it? That's very useful. But if I apologize, if you apologize to me, or no, if I apologize to you and you accept that apology, and then you say, but there's something else that I want to talk about. If I then blow up, if I then weaponize your non-acceptance, not even your non-acceptance, but it's that you accepted it and that the deal is over. It wasn't that was just a single exchange to move things forward. That was supposed to close the conversation so that we can move on until this thing comes up again, because we're getting too close to the root. And we don't want to disturb the root, because we can cut the fruit away. We can address the individual tiffs and the individual disagreements and the individual fights. But if you get too deep in, you're going to nick the root. You're going to hurt the root, and that's going to fuck everything up, because this is my dysfunction problem generator. This is my time structure generator. This is my template for human interaction, relationship, romantic interaction generator. And if you damage that, I'm going to have an existential crisis, because I'm going to have to decide for myself how I'm going to relate to my partner, instead of just using the template that I observed from my parents, or alternatively the mirror image template that I observed from my parents, which is still the template. You just take it and flip it over. That's not autonomy. That's, here's the plan. You can follow the plan, or you can follow the plan backwards. It's following the plan. And usually, if you're following the plan backwards, it's because there's a bigger plan that says, here's the plan I'm going to give you, and I want you to follow it in reverse. You know what I mean? That's the sensation of autonomy and freedom, but it's not really there. And I think it's that ability just to get suspicious about these things that are going on. Because that suspicion, without judgment, is basically curiosity, which is very conducive to the awareness. And the awareness is that ability to see what the fuck you're doing right here and right now. What's happening between us? What do you seem to be doing? What am I basing my perception that you seem to be doing that? What is that made out of, right? Is it accurate? Is it not? Is it within a range of accuracy? Is it just obscenely uncharitable? Is it just simply I'm trying to be as charitable as I can, and I still can't overlook the fact that you definitely seem to be attempting to sabotage this exchange? What's going on there? That's useful for me to be able to see. What's going on inside my own mind? What are my, how am I patterned and programmed to react when I have decided that you're behaving in a patterned and programmed way? It's the ability to ask those questions and answer those questions and engage with those experiential realities. This is happening right now. Do you know what I mean? We're not talking about stuff that happened in the past and, let's reassess it and actually see that right there. That's your inner child, and those are constructs and those are concepts, But if I can become aware of what I'm doing, what am I doing? Am I conceptualizing myself into a state of impotence? Which is to say, instead of actually looking at what's going on, right, and really watching what's happening, do I just take one specific instance of it and then go on some kind of psychoanalytic, archaeological dig where I tell myself stories about what that means and why everyone does that and how everyone needs to heal from that and how everything that I see in the world is an example of someone going through that specific thing? Or am I able to watch and say, boy, it seems like I'm distracting myself with dumb shit that I'm just making up on the spot. What am I really doing? Oh, wow, I'm systematically focusing on what I don't want. Oh, wow, I'm systematically finding ways to be pissed at my partner. Oh, wow, I'm systematically finding ways to rationalize putting up with their bullshit when I shouldn't. Oh, it seems like that is a theme in my life. That's something that I do over and over and over again. That's something I'm very good at convincing myself to do, even though at a conscious level I know it doesn't serve me. That's bringing the reality of the stuff to the fore so that you can deal with that. Instead of, that's the thing, dealing with things that are real instead of talking about shit that's made up. That's sort of my, that's in fact like the core of my sort of personal growth philosophy. It's that, dealing with shit that's real instead of talking about shit that's just made up and as a distraction from your life. Like the mechanic, like when you take your car into the mechanic doesn't go, well, I feel like this Toyota, when these were manufactured, there were a lot of things going on and they didn't really give the cars enough attention and they really were rushing the process. And, I feel as if the alignment being off really could be traced back to someone being rushed to meet a quota and not putting, what do you want to do? Fix the fucking tires, man. I gotta drive my car. Like, that's the thing. Like, you don't care. You know what I mean? Like, do you take left-hand turns a little bit harder than you need to because your dad took left-hand turns really hard when he was arguing with your mom in the front of the car? We just need to say, listen, you're turning too hard and it's messing the thing up. Or you're not doing this maintenance thing, and if you stop doing what you are doing that isn't working, or start doing something that you're not doing that would work if you did it, your life's gonna be better. And it's very simple. It's very simple. Sometimes it is emotional. Sometimes there are, and that's okay. But that's not the point. So the catharsis is a thing that happens sometimes when you start dealing with stuff that needs to be dealt with. It's not the badge. It's not the trophy. The crying isn't the badge of accomplishment. The crying is analogous to any other physical activity. The crying is analogous to sneezing. The crying is analogous to having a bowel movement. The crying is analogous to empty your bladder. Sometimes that's what your body needs to do to process what's happening. That's that. But there's not like some kind of I poop 17 times a day, so I feel like I'm more spiritually evolved than you. That's not how it works, you know what I'm saying? And you can actually, spend so much time doing that you're missing out on other things in life that will probably be more rewarding. You want to do it as much as you need to and then get on with your fucking life. That's, I think, kind of what this stuff is about. You know what I mean? But it's freedom from those things.